One important thing to flag up front, this isn't actually a signed peace deal yet. Oh, okay. I thought Trump had, like, signed it in France or something. What's being reported is a draft 14-point memorandum of understanding that the US and Iran are preparing to sign, with a signing ceremony reportedly set for Friday. Okay, so this is something we'll hear more about. Ooh, I gotta start this recording. That's right. Here we go. Senior US officials read out the draft to reporters on Wednesday. That's today. Yesterday. Sorry. So, read out the draft. So that's already happened. Speaking on conditions of anonymity, because Iran has not released the document ahead of the formal signing. So the terms below are from a leak/briefed draft. Okay. So we're going to go through it, but like when it's from a leaked draft, you can't know. We're really waiting for Friday for the official thing to come out, because everything I've seen on this has been like terribly negative. The officials on both sides have stressed that either party can walk away before anything binding is finalized. With that caveat, here's what's in it. Okay, so the terms below are from a leaked/briefed draft. Big picture. It's called the Islamabad Memorandum of Understanding. Crucially, it's an interim framework, not the final deal. It's essentially an agreement to stop fighting and then negotiate the real agreement within 60 days. Wasn't Trump saying, like, the blockade's over, ships can go through the strait now? Has that happened? Like, if we'd seen that, we'd see a large drop in oil prices. Okay, well, the oil market has taken this very positively. Let me pull it up. Clearly. What is that? The 16th, so 2 days ago. And we saw a big drop. As one Atlantic Council analyst put it, there really is no nuclear agreement yet, other than an agreement to negotiate over Iran's enriched uranium stockpile and a possible enrichment moratorium. Okay. The 14 points grouped by theme. Ending the war. Points 1 to 3. Both sides declare an immediate and permanent end to military operations on all fronts, including Lebanon. Ooh. That was one of those ones that's been holding it up, right? Because Israel and the Lebanon front. Iran sees that as another front to the war. And so they're really trying to get that included. And pledge not to attack each other or threaten force, while respecting Lebanon's territorial integrity and sovereignty. Did they talk to Benjamin Netanyahu about this? Because he did not seem on board in any way, shape, or form with that. They commit to respecting each other's sovereignty and not infringing in internal affairs, and to reach a final deal within a maximum of 60 days. Extendable by mutual consent. Okay. Point 4, naval/military de-escalation. The U.S. begins removing its naval blockade immediately and fully ends it within 30 days, with vessel traffic restored towards pre-war levels. The U.S. also undertakes to pull its forces away from Iran's proximity within 30 days after the final deal. Point 5, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran agrees to use best efforts for safe, toll-free passage of commercial vessels between the Persian Gulf and the Sea of Oman for 60 days only. What? The toll-free window is temporary. The draft provides for toll-free passage for 60 days but does not rule out fees being imposed afterwards. Iran would also handle demining and removal of obstacles within 30 days and discuss future administration of the strait with Oman and other Gulf states. That's not good. Like, it sounds like they're going to set a toll booth up on the Strait of Hormuz. And the issue you run into is that, like, this is a precedent-setting thing. As soon as one country sets up a toll going through their waters, you're going to see many other countries do the same thing. Maybe not right away, but eventually. There's a lot of choke points around the world where the waters are like, oh, it's international waters, but like it's within their territorial waters. And so that's a dangerous precedent to set. Like, we could see shipping over the oceans is by far the cheapest way to do it. And it looks like it's about to become a little less cheap, which means imported goods are about to increase in price. Not a good thing. Sorry, let me just pull this up here for a second. I like to have the timer there. Okay, let's continue. Again, we are looking at a leaked / briefed draft. And so I don't want to like go, in my opinion, the Strait of Hormuz toll, like this is one of the things the US really didn't want. And so I personally see this as capitulating to Iran if they get to put a toll booth up. Because before the war, they didn't get to put a toll booth up. So that is, I hope that one doesn't come out in the final one. Money and reconstruction. The U.S. commits with regional partners to a plan of at least 30 billion USD for Iran's reconstruction and economic development. Mechanisms to be finalized in the final deal. Okay, so whenever I play like a war strategy game, the winner demands monetary concessions from the loser of the war. Like that's how it works. And so Iran is getting monetary concessions from the US to end this war, right? Is Trump saying he won? Like, if you win, you don't have to pay 30 billion, and you don't have to pay 30 billion. Sorry, 300 billion. Okay, again, draft. Leaked, brief draft. This deal is starting to look like a U.S. surrender, from my perspective. They get a toll booth. They get monetary concessions. Let's continue. What else are they getting? The U.S. would issue waivers for Iranian crude oil and petroleum exports immediately upon signing, and make Iran's frozen assets fully available, payable to beneficiaries designated by Iran's central bank. Okay, so the money they frozen they get back. Sanctions. The U.S. undertakes to terminate all sanctions. What? So this is how they were stressing the Iranian economy. And they were doing this before the war as well. This is looking like an absolutely terrible deal for the U.S. Like, sorry, playing with the sound here. Like, Trump signed this? This is everything he said he didn't want. Am I missing something here? And okay, I'm not through it yet. Nuclear is the next one. Let's continue. The U.S. undertakes to terminate all sanction. UN Security Council resolution, IAEA Board of Governors resolutions, and unilateral U.S. primary and secondary sanctions on an agreed schedule as part of the final deal. Note this is waive but not fully eliminate. In the interim, the U.S. would move to waive but not fully eliminate some broad sanctions once the deal is finalized. Okay, so remove some sanctions, not all the sanctions from what I understand. Nuclear. Iran reaffirms it won't acquire or develop nuclear weapons. Pinky promise? Right? The two sides agreed to resolve Iran's stockpile of enriched material, with a baseline method being down blending on site under IAEA supervision. Oh, so you can like disenrich uranium? That's interesting. I guess if you can enrich it, makes sense. Down blending. On site under IAEA supervision. Enrichment itself and Iran's nuclear needs are left to be negotiated in the final deal. In the interim, both sides maintain the status quo. Iran freezes its nuclear program as is, and the U.S. imposes no new sanctions and deploys no additional forces. Okay, well, the nuclear was definitely the most important one. Like, preventing them from getting a nuclear weapon was, in my opinion, the primary goal of the conflict. Again, like, I don't want to take any of these at face value because it's a leaked / brief draft. But it sure seems like the U.S. is paying money. They're allowing Iran to set up a toll after 60 days. They're reducing sanctions. It seems like they're getting concessions on nuclear. The Strait of Hormuz, yeah, like some of these are really like having to pay 300 billion. Like, is that taxpayer money? They're just given to Iran? How much does the war cost them on top of that? This does not seem like a favorable deal to the U.S., no matter how I look at this. Implementation, point 13 and 14. An exclusive mechanism will monitor compliance. Negotiations on the final deal begin once specified paragraphs start being implemented, and the final deal would be locked in by a binding UN Security Council resolution. Why you should treat this cautiously. Okay, here we go. A few things worth keeping in mind beyond the terms themselves. An enforcement mechanism is essentially the threat of renewed force. Asked how the terms would be enforced, Trump said the threat of further bombing would be sufficient, saying they'd bomb the hell out of them if Iran violates the agreement. He's also downplayed his own role in signing, calling it a memorandum of understanding rather than the kind of binding document he necessarily put his name on. Okay, but like, his memorandum of understanding has you giving over $300 billion. So what, you give them the money and then you bomb them more? That doesn't seem productive. There's real skepticism about durability. Analysts have warned that a memorandum of understanding without a follow-on deal would be volatile and impossible to sustain on its own, and that there will likely be a significant gap between the aspirations in the memorandum of understanding and what actually emerges in a final deal. Israel appears opposed to any deal and is expected to use its influence to block or undermine one, especially if it views the terms as bad, because they're basically being signed up to, because they did not want to end their conflict in Lebanon. The two sides are also already framing the financial terms differently. Iran's Revolutionary Guard claims the agreement provides Iran with $24 billion in frozen assets during the 60-day period, with half to be paid before talks begin. Though U.S. accounts differ, both sides are claiming victory, and energy insiders are skeptical about how fast the Strait of Hormuz can actually reopen. Well, that's true. What's keeping the strait closed is really high insurance costs. Basically, if you choose to go through the Strait of Hormuz, your asset, so massive ship that costs a lot of money, will not be insured, because your insurance companies are like, no, too dangerous, we will not cover you if you go through the Strait of Hormuz. So that is what's keeping the strait closed. And for insurance companies to be able to feel safe insuring vehicles through there, insuring boats through there again, they need a pretty high degree of certainty that nothing is going to happen. And so that doesn't happen overnight. There's been peace deals before, and then ships have been attacked, so they will likely wait for a while before they allow ships to go through insured again, which is the only way it reopens. And procedurally, it's not done domestically. How is Trump framing this as a win? Both sides are claiming victory. Like, this one, he said, will not happen. The loser is the one that gives the winner money. Sanctions, I mean, sanctions for the nuclear is kind of something you always expected, right? Like that was kind of Obama's deal. They remove sanctions and they get concessions on nuclear. And so that one makes sense, but giving them money and giving them a toll booth are two things I'm pretty sure Trump said. At least this one, he said he will not happen. 60 days. What's the date today? U.S. midterm date. U.S. midterms date. Why is it not getting it this time? U.S. midterms date. Okay. Doesn't like the November 3rd. June. July, So, assuming that they signed Friday, August. So they would get a toll booth. I was looking at it because I'm like, is he just trying to put this off until after the midterms? But no. It looks like Iran will have their toll booth set up before the midterms. All assuming this deal holds. Like there's so many times we've seen the deal announced and the deal not hold. That's concerning. Okay. And procedurally, it's not done domestically either. Senate Republicans have been pressing the Trump administration for details and have signaled Congress will ultimately vote on the final agreement. Oh. I mean, Congress does stuff in the US now? I mean, I thought just Trump did things. Like he entered the war without Congress. I assume he'll just end the war without Congress as well. So the short version, there's a detailed draft framework to end the current war and negotiate towards a broader settlement. A signing was expected Friday, but it's an interim memorandum of understanding that either side can walk away from. The hard nuclear and sanctions questions are deferred to a 60-day negotiation, and several key players, Israel, parts of Congress, aren't necessarily on board. Point 5 seems to allow Iran to set up a toll booth on the Strait of Hormuz after a 60-day window. I'm pretty sure Trump came out and said that that would not happen. What changed? Like this was a sticking point. You read point 5 correctly, and the gap you're noticing is real and very much alive. Here's what changed. A short version: Trump permanent toll fee free line and the actual text of the Memorandum of Understanding were never the same thing, and his own team quietly confirmed the narrower version when they read the document out to the reporters. What Trump said versus what the document says. Okay. Trump made the maximalist claim publicly. After the agreement, he declared the Strait of Hormuz would reopen and remain permanently toll-free. Vice President Vance reinforced it, telling CNBC it would be toll-free for the long term. But the text only guarantees the toll-free status for 60 days. When Trump's team read the full Memorandum of Understanding to journalists on Wednesday, it included a formal acknowledgement that the deal would secure toll-free passage only for 60 days and doesn't preclude future fees. That's exactly the window you've spotted in point 5. What changed? Nothing in the text. Trump's framing shifted to match it. So it's less that the deal changed and more that the permanent toll-free promise was rhetorical, that the written agreement never backed up. The toll-free promise was rhetoric that the written agreement never backed up. When confronted with the discrepancy, Trump didn't insist the document would be rewritten. He pivoted to enforcement by threat. He downplayed the 60-day limit, saying the thing that will stop Iran from eventually charging tolls. Okay. He downplayed the 60-day limit, saying that the thing that will stop Iran from eventually charging tolls, because you can't cover everything in a document, is common sense, adding that they don't want to get bombed, they don't want to get hit. Then put it in the agreement. Because it certainly sounds like they're just setting up to put a toll booth there. Like, to be fair, they'll put it up right before your midterm elections. You need like a 120-day ban on it or something if you want to get past your midterms without that coming up. That's the same enforcement logic that the earlier parts of the deals. The deterrent is a threat of renewed bombing, not a binding clause. The toll versus fee sleight of hand. There's a second layer worth understanding because it's how Iran is threading the needle. Iran has consistently said it won't charge tolls but will charge service fees. Oh, they changed its name. A day after Trump's permanent toll-free declaration, Iran's signaled ships could still face charges. Iran's foreign minister's spokesman said Iran was not seeking to levy transit tolls. However, fees will be charged in exchange for the services that they are providing. The service, not getting shot with a drone. That's the service they are providing. Because you could transit there without paying any kind of fee before. Those service fees are framed as covering navigation-related facilities, environmental protection, and maritime support services. Oh, that's so dumb. That's so dumb. That's a toll. That's a toll. This distinction isn't just spin, it tracks international law. Under UNCLOS, ships in international straits like Hormuz enjoy a right of transit passage. They cannot be Okay, let's read that again. Under UNCLOS, Article 37 to 44, ships in international strait like Hormuz enjoy a right of passage that cannot be impeded, and coastal states may not levy charges by reasons only of passage. Fees are permitted only for specific services rendered, like pilotage, and must be non-discriminatory. Ooh, so you're saying it's legal. They're setting up a toll, but we're gonna build a very fancy toll booth that helps you get through. Yeah, you can get through on your own, and you've been getting through on your own for decades, but now you need to pay the toll. Sorry, the service fee. So Iran can plausibly claim service fees are legal even where a flat toll would not be. Critics counter that Iran's blanket selective charge isn't genuinely service-based, making it a violation, and there's no post-1945 precedent for a coastal state imposing mandatory tolls on a natural strait. And Iran's negotiators have been blunt that things won't simply revert. On Wednesday, Iran lead negotiator said the Strait of Hormuz will not return to pre-war conditions, and that Iran will receive a fee for services to shipping. Iran has confirmed it won't collect tolls for 60 days, but per its state media, will begin charging ships for services after that period. And it has set up Persian Gulf Strait Authority and coordinated with Oman to administer traffic. Worth knowing, this fight predates the deal. This isn't new friction. Back in April, Trump posted that Iran better not be charging fees and better stop now. Iran's IRGC. So this is something that actually was they were looking into doing before the war. Iran's IRGC has been running a toll booth since mid-March, vetting foreign flag vessels mid-March. Is that before the war? That lines up pretty much right at the start of the war. The war started, and then they started charging a toll. So that's during the war. Vetting foreign flag vessels. I like how I look at the price of oil and that's the war right there. And that's the junk. Like that's when it started. Where are we? So Iran has been trying to monetize control of the Strait for months, and the Memorandum of Understanding essentially papers over that dispute with a 60-day truce rather than resolving it. So, to directly answer what changed, the binding text never promised permanence. Point 5 always said 60 days. What changed is that Trump's public framing collapsed from permanent toll fee to common sense, and threat of bombing will keep that way. We'll keep it that way. I mean, it sounds like they're setting up the toll booth. Yeah, well, the threat of bombing will stop them from adding a toll. Meanwhile, they are building the toll booth. Threat of bombing is not working. Have you tried something else? And Iran has openly stated it intends to charge service fees once the 60-day window closes. The two sides have a genuine unresolved disagreement that the deal defers rather than settles, which is why analysts keep flagging Hormuz as the most likely thing to blow up the whole arrangement up. Oh, so this is still a point of contention. Like, this deal does not favor the US. Like, I kind of expected sanctions for the nuclear program, right? 300 billion? Like, that's just extracting money out of the US. The toll booth looks bad. Honestly, the whole deal looks really bad for the US. Again, let's leak / brief draft. I think they're supposed to sign Friday, so we'll have a much better idea tomorrow what this looks like. But man, this doesn't look good. Okay, let's watch a video on it. See if my take is the same as theirs. War front, the Iran war was a total failure. Well, I know which way he's gonna lean.
Will go down as one of the most incompetent ever made. The US lost on virtually every point. We just don't win anymore. Now that's a tweet about a certain Iran deal from a certain political leader in the United States. In fact, it's from Donald Trump himself, discussing the original deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran under former President Barack Obama. It's making the rounds again today, but not in a way that Trump may have hoped for. Instead, it's circulating because the results are in on his new Memorandum of Understanding with Iran, the final culmination of the war he launched alongside Israel back in February this year. And those results are, simply stated, an unmitigated catastrophe. Washington has gotten exactly none of what it set out to achieve. But it's far worse than just having nothing to show for America's troubles. The nation has suffered its worst strategic defeat since at least Vietnam. And the most damning part of it all is that this...
They didn't even put boots on the ground. Like, how have they suffered such a defeat without even putting people there? I mean, at least Iraq, like, they invaded, right?
Was entirely self-inflicted against an enemy that just months ago was in worse shape than ever. When we went to record our last episode on the Iran conflict just back on...
That's the thing. They were... Before the war, they were winning the war. Like, Iran was near a state of collapse. And if anything, the war has seemed to solidify the regime's control even more.
On Monday, news had just broken that the US and Iran had finally reached an agreement, and this time, it looks like this one was actually going to stick. Beyond that, though, the actual terms of the deal were unknown. Well, ladies and gents, the terms of the 14-point Memorandum of Understanding between the two have since been announced by the US, and the result is an absolute disaster for Washington and Jerusalem alike. And by disaster, we don't just mean this didn't quite go Trump's way, or that it's a moderate setback that the world will move past in just a matter of weeks. No. This is an epic failure of war planning and execution by Washington without precedent in American history. This MOU is already in effect, signed behind closed doors by both American and Iranian
Yeah. Like, I've seen this. He was signing it, right?
leaders, and while there is reason to question whether the deal will survive until a formal signing ceremony on Friday, any changes made to the deal itself are almost certain to be minimal in scale. In the agreement, the United States has publicly endorsed some of the most maximalist goals of the Islamic Republic's foreign policy ambitions imaginable, things they wouldn't have signed up for if there was literally any realistic alternative. What's more, the core issue that Washington ostensibly launched the war over, the nuclear component, has been kicked to a later date entirely, with Iran receiving a significant amount of relief before such a deal is even discussed, much less agreed to. To give you a sense of what's on the table here, right off the bat, this deal allocates $300 billion, with a B, to be sent to the Islamic Republic to assist with the cost of reconstruction. It has been reported that Washington wouldn't be directly bankrolling this fund with US taxpayer dollars, though it remains unclear just exactly where that
Then where do you get $300 billion?
money's supposed to come from. That $300 billion is just a sign-up bonus, if you will, for everything else that comes next. Per the terms of the MOU, quote, the United States commits to ending on a schedule to be agreed upon as part of the final agreement all types of sanctions currently facing the Islamic Republic of Iran, including resolutions of the United Nations Security Council and the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency, and all unilateral US sanctions, both primary and secondary, end quote. Of all the points in the agreement, that is perhaps the most impactful. Iran's economy has been absolutely...
I didn't see... Oh, well, I guess this is what they were using to harm the economy before the war even began, right?
crippled for the better part of 2 decades by one of the world's most strict sanctions regimes in history. Because they've moved the actual nuclear talks to a later stage, much of the initial relief is coming without any concessions by the Islamic Republic, aside from a pinky promise not to build a nuke, which, we should add, was a pinky promise they'd been making for years. On top of all that, the agreement reportedly unfreezes over $100 billion in Iranian assets held in long-since-frozen foreign accounts, with the first $24 billion coming during the nuclear negotiations window. That's a hell of an expensive pinky promise, isn't it? Now, there is some ambiguous language in this deal, including the phrase, on a schedule to be agreed upon as part of the final agreement. It's extremely legalese, isn't it? And it's not entirely clear at the time of recording whether the full sanctions relief will come before that part is finalized. What is clear is that a considerable amount of it will be granted to Iran beforehand. The Wall Street Journal reported on Tuesday that the agreement will allow Tehran to immediately sell oil. They also highlighted...
Well, I mean, they were selling oil through like most of the war, too. It was only midway through the conflict that Trump set their own blockade to stop the oil. It's kind of crazy that they were allowing Iran to benefit from high oil prices for a while there.
That Iranian supertankers had already crossed freely through the US blockade, indicating that this part of the agreement had already
Okay, so this part's already
come
going.
into effect. And on the question of the Strait of Hormuz itself, while the agreement calls for it to be reopened in both directions, there's nothing in the text ruling out Iranian management of the waterway, including the imposition of transit tolls on ships passing through. Trump has stated that tolls will not happen, but their absence from the text is nevertheless significant. Tehran has already indicated that they'll be imposing a totally separate, completely not tolling system involving
Completely not tolling system. It's service fees.
service fees to pass through. While the US's stated goals throughout the war have been difficult to pin down, it became increasingly clear that they were seeking a deal by the time the shooting mostly came to a stop in April under the first ceasefire. Now, the easiest point of comparison against which a new deal could be measured was the old Iran deal, negotiated during the Obama administration. That framework, called the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA, wasn't universally popular, but it nevertheless put meaningful limitations on Iran's nuclear program. Across the board, the text of the new MOU is meaningfully worse for the US than the original JCPOA was. The much maligned sign-up bonus paid to Iran the first go-around was an estimated total of $150 billion. No small chunk of change, but half that of the new Trump deal. On timing too, the original deal appears to have been far more robust. The JCPOA's implementation of sanctions relief came only after the Islamic Republic had made good on a number of actions, not words, regarding their nuclear program. This included an IAEA verification that they had shipped out better than 98% of their highly enriched uranium, the stuff that would ostensibly be used in a bomb, as nuclear energy doesn't require enrichment anywhere near this level. That was along with the dismantling of 2/3 of their centrifuges and, more or less, the destruction of their Iraq heavy water reactor. So to say this is a strategic defeat for Washington would have to be the understatement of the f***ing century, no matter who might have overseen this. But given that the person is Donald Trump, things become all the more incredible, don't they? And just why Trump thought this was a good idea to jump headfirst into in the first place, we do want to take a moment to tell you about our subscriber site, fronts.co. It's our home for everything that can't fit here on the main channel. And every week, we publish a minimum of 2 exclusive videos, 3 expert-written articles, and our weekly Middle East Roundtable podcast, where our team digs deep into the context behind what's going on in the region. For just $5 a month or $50 a year, it's all yours. Right now, that means a ton of additional Iran coverage, but it's far from Middle East exclusive. We also have ongoing coverage of Ukraine, Somalia, the Cold War between Egypt and Ethiopia, and so much more. Once again, that's fronts.co. And now, let's get back to figuring out how the hell Donald Trump ended up here. The mind of Trump. Part of what makes this quite such a staggering setback is just how central Iran has been to Donald Trump's foreign policy during both of his terms, as well as before he even ran for office. Always a prolific tweeter, there are dozens of instances of Trump over the years blasting Iran for various moves in the region, especially on their nuclear program. He has made attacking Obama's original
It's sounding like the U.S. is backing down and just giving Iran everything they want. Which is not how I expected the conflict to end, in any way.
JCPOA into a cornerstone of his foreign policy, and those past attacks have, of course, been making the rounds on X the last few days. Posts discussing the JCPOA, like quoting Trump, Iran was on its last legs and ready to collapse until the US came along and gave it a lifeline in the form of the Iran deal.
And his is over twice that, huh?
$150 billion, end quote. And those not exactly aging well after his recent MOU and its $300 billion were made public. Similarly, one of Trump's most consistent criticism of the JCPOA was that it focused on the Islamic Republic's nuclear program exclusively, with no mention of either their ballistic missile program or funding of proxy forces. So it has been an absolute whirlwind to find ourselves here in 2026, where the president is not just forging a deal that also lacks ballistic missile constraints, but is outright defending the Islamic Republic's right to have them in the first place. And we're not kidding. Speaking to reporters in Paris, he said, quote, "I'm saying that if other countries have them, it's a little bit unfair for Iran not to have some." End quote.
Oh, he's completely changed his tune. Like, is he accepted defeat? Well, that's what it's starting to look like.
Nor does the deal meaningfully address Iranian proxies, except to state that hostilities in Lebanon are covered by the memorandum itself. So, if you find yourself dizzied by all of this, we can't exactly blame you. It's been quite a few days, to say the least. The question still stands, though. How the hell did any of this happen? While it seems like a distant memory now, given all that's happened since, 2026 kicked off with an American attack, not on Iran, but on Venezuela, the raid that arrested Venezuela's then president, Nicolas Maduro. The whole thing went just about as well as Washington could have hoped for. They stormed into the Venezuelan equivalent of the White House, arrested Maduro, and were out within a matter of hours. What's more is what didn't happen. There were no American fatalities, no long-term American occupation, and no expensive nation-building project. Trump and the administration more broadly were riding high when they decided, through their own independent decision-making process, but backed by a very eager Israeli government, that a similar operation would be possible to pull off in Iran. It might take a bit longer and require more ammo to be...
Iran's completely different. Like, their regime has been developed and designed, it's been built to withstand an attack. Like, Iran has been preparing for an American attack for decades. And it seems like they prepared well.
expended, but the theory was similar enough. Go in, drop bombs on critical Iranian government and military infrastructure, eliminate much of their upper echelon, and within a few weeks, find someone else in the government to work with. Easy, yeah? Well, the warning signs were there from the outset that this was going to be more challenging than Venezuela ever was. 1 month before the operation kicked off, by which time it was abundantly clear that the US was gearing up for potential strikes, American Secretary of State and Viceroy of Venezuela, Marco Rubio, admitted to Congress that, quote, no one knows who would replace then Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei if he was removed from power. Minor details though, right? Well, as it turns out, no, not quite. After the initial strike on the Islamic Republic on February 28th took out Khamenei, the US struggled to find an appropriate successor, by their own admission partially because all of the candidates that they'd previously considered were, well, dead. That issue came to define the rest of the operation because it underscored a major flaw, the defining flaw even, in Washington's thinking. The truth was, simply put, that Venezuela was a fundamentally different system than Iran, where the government in Caracas was a deeply personalist system that answered directly to one centralized leader and thus was highly susceptible to a decapitation strike. Tehran has quite literally built itself around being able to survive such an operation by decentralizing command through what's known as its Mosaic Doctrine. In case, that might be a useful asset someday. It's extremely charitable to call Washington and Jerusalem's military actions a proper campaign, but to the extent that a campaign really existed, it failed to account for several other issues that quickly became apparent once the lack of viable alternative leaders became a problem. The first is perhaps the most obvious, the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran has the geographic advantage of sitting alongside a narrow body of water that just so happens to carry a fifth of the world's oil traffic through it, and the Islamic Republic had long made clear that they would close it in the event of an attack. What's all the more tragic is that Washington knew all of this going in, or at the very least, should have known this going in, and seems to have chosen not to operate accordingly. When it comes to major foreign policy developments, the initial headlines are only the very first inkling of the broader impacts, and those can ricochet around for months, years, or even decades. The Iran war will have knock-on effects all its own, reverberating throughout the region and the wider world for the foreseeable future. The first place this will show up is in the ongoing negotiations, where, remember, the nuclear component hasn't even been discussed yet.
So they still haven't signed any of this. We saw Trump signing in like a provisional deal. He was saying that they don't expect the final terms, even though they're not fully set, and they're going to sign Friday. They don't expect the terms to change all that much from what we were reading earlier. And he seems to think that the sanctions relief is actually the biggest concession, and not the $300 billion.
Back during the original negotiations in the 2010s, Iran came to the table under the crushing weight of international sanctions, coupled with the looming threat that Israel might just call off the whole negotiation thing and decide to begin bombing. This time, the situation could not be more difficult.
Yep.
The Islamic Republic, in the last year alone, has withstood a prolonged bombing campaign by Israel and the United States, not once but twice, and is very much still kicking. The fact that their ability to exert control over the Strait of Hormuz was able to force Washington to agree to such an extreme series of concessions has given them an ace up their sleeve, one that will serve as a long-term threat to redeploy whenever they see fit. Cooperate with us, they could say, or just close the strait again. What's more, the regime is now firmly under the control of much more hardline leaders, including the commander-in-chief of the IRGC, Ahmad Fahidi. If the negotiators of yesterday weren't exactly eager to make concessions that Washington deemed necessary, the negotiators of today make the original guys look like peaceniks. A similarly immediate change is happening with Israel, the nation that has potentially suffered even more setbacks from this war than the US did. Israel has been long bogged down in conflicts on numerous fronts, including Gaza, Lebanon, Yemen, and Syria, amongst others, but they've had the full backing of their allies.
I feel like they've been in war for a long time. Like, war exhaustion is definitely a thing that'll build up in a country. Like that's how the U.S. lost the Vietnam War. War exhaustion just built up at home against it, and I feel like Israel has been in conflict after conflict after conflict, without really any breaks. And I imagine, because I think they got elections coming up soon, they're probably going to go through a pretty extreme change.
In Washington throughout it all. While Israel is unlikely to completely lose their backing overnight, especially if threatened with anything along the lines of a massive attack, there has nevertheless been a wedge driven between the two allies that seems to be turning into a permanent rift. Part of that comes down to this Memorandum of Understanding, which explicitly includes a call for a, quote, immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon, end quote. The US has agreed to this on Israel's behalf, but the Jewish state has been far more reluctant, due in no small part to the fact that it wasn't exactly there to participate in the talks themselves. They've been maintaining that they will not abide by the terms as they pertain to Lebanon.
Oh, Israel says it is not bound by Lebanon's ceasefire clause in the Memorandum of Understanding agreement. So doesn't that just mean it's all hot air? Because if Israel doesn't stop its conflict in Lebanon, I think that will destroy the Memorandum of Understanding. I mean, the current Memorandum of Understanding is really disfavorable to the U.S., in my opinion. But that's what they're going for, I guess.
Both during the negotiations and after the memorandum was finalized, a stance that has increasingly drawn Trump's outrage. There was the now infamously spicy phone call. No, not that kind of phone call, that would be weird, but the kind where people scream at each other down the line between Washington and Jerusalem 2 weeks ago. Among the notable Trump quotes from that call, "You're fucking crazy," and "Everyone hates Israel." But that proved to be something of a warm-up act for what's come after. Just the other day,
more?
Trump reportedly had another heated phone call with the Israeli premier, telling Axios, quote, "Why did Bibi have to do a fucking attack in Beirut? I was so pissed off, I let him know. He has no fucking judgment."
And Beirut is their capital, so... Israel map Google. Because most of the conflict, from my understanding... Okay, better. Where's our line? Here we go. So most of the conflict is in the southern part here, against Hezbollah. And Beirut is way up here. But like Hezbollah commanders or whatnot will stay in Beirut. So this is like where they'll organize stuff. But the conflict is actually all down here. And so them striking up into Beirut is what's pissing Trump off. Look at all the lines. Like where they don't agree on borders, I'm assuming, or what those lines mean. Okay.
And I let him know that. End quote. The remarkable development here is that when it comes to Jerusalem's operations in Lebanon, it is the United States and Iran that are now ostensibly on the same side. They're both pushing for Israeli restraint above all else, although through very different methods. The fact that that sentence is even something we could say out loud tells you just how far things have shifted, doesn't it? If all of this weren't enough for you, there are the more long-term implications of this debacle. When a country as geopolitically important as the US stumbles, the rest of the world notices, and it can embolden other powers to think they can begin getting away with more. Afghanistan can serve as a useful, if
well, I mean, if a toll booth goes up, you can expect more toll booths to go up.
There's comparison here. Fiona Hill, a leading scholar on Putin and former NSC staffer during Trump's first term, publicly argued that the botched withdrawal in 2021 signaled weakness that the Russian president read as something of a green light to invade Ukraine without risking a strong American response. Whether that same effect takes hold in Beijing, Moscow, Pyongyang, or another capital entirely is too soon to tell. But let's just say that we're not exactly rushing to book our next flight to Taipei, or to Latvia, or even to Seoul. And by the way, don't travel to Ethiopia's Tigray region either, but more on that in a couple of days. If there is one positive thing we can say about all of this, it's that after recognizing that the war strategy wasn't working, Trump did the one thing that precious few politicians are willing to do. Rather than doubling down and escalating, he ended the war outright. This is hardly something to celebrate, given how much has been lost strategically, but nevertheless, the decision has been recognized as the right thing to do. Moreover, the choice stands in stark contrast to
you put boots on the ground or you sign a ceasefire deal. Oh, hey, what's going on, Kelly?
the actions of men like Russian President Vladimir.
Just watching about the Iran ceasefire deal that has come up. Doesn't sound like it's going so well.